if you ask yourself, like, if I was a therapist and I came in for an interview and I've been out 6 or 7 years and I was left alone in the gym with another therapist, what do you think my questions might be of that therapist? I mean, what do you think the top 3 questions would be that I would typically ask? And if somebody doesn't ask any of them, then that's a little bit of a red flag. Like, really? You're not really that interested in this position then. Guys, welcome back to part 3 of our 4-part hiring series. As many of you may know, I started a staffing company way in the beginning, and I was averaging 5 to 7 interviews a week for almost 10 years. And I since sold that company, and I've had private practices, up to 6 clinics and 6 nursing homes, 160 staff. And so I'm very aware of the importance of personnel, hiring, attracting, retaining, and enhancing. This series is the first step in building the ideal company culture for your practice. In doing that, you have to not justify what you see. You have to not compromise. You have to avoid watering down your standards and lowering your expectations. Don't believe what you see on the news. Don't believe what other people are telling you. There are still very good people out there. There are very highly trained people out there that you can find. They may not be in your backyard, and I think that's the biggest bit of advice I can give you is learn how to hire and recruit outside of your backyard. Setting that tip aside, this part 3, is probably the most important part in that once you do part 1 and you write the right ad, you open with a question, you define your company culture in the ad, you make it a bit of a mystery and a bit interesting in the ad that they want to learn more about you. Don't try to compete on money with the big boys and all of that kind of throwing money at people to bring them in, because that's all you're going to get. You're going to get money hungry, greedy people who only think of themselves. Don't go down that path. Think of the family you built. Think of the friendship circle you built. Think of the peer group, coworker, collaborative team you're building at work, right? That's the same thing. You don't change how you've lived your life just because you're in business. You build the same dynamic around you in business with the people that you bring in. So don't compromise, don't water down, don't lower your expectations. In the process of hiring, you're in that interview phase. This is part 3, where you did the phone screen, and then you're bringing them through interview day, which is a tour. And then there's a formal interview. In the process of that, there's several red flags that you might run into. And I'm going to back up to the screen and move you forward for some of the things that I look for that really tell me a lot about this candidate and may help me in avoiding making a mistake and hiring the wrong person. I will say, for those of you who are not familiar with myself, Brian Gallagher, physical therapist, and Meg Business Management, just go to our website and you'll learn all about Meg Academy. It's www.megbusiness.com. Click below. All the links are there. All of our other videos are there. Podcast is there. We have a resource tab. It's really robust, and we're very transparent. I'm very much what you see is what you get. So if you like that kind of philosophy and you like that kind of honest, sincere approach, who's really interested in seeing you win first and seeing themselves just contribute to that, because that's really the role I see, is how do I advance the profession of physical therapy and how do I help you live the life that you've always envisioned for yourself? If you find that that really syncs up well with you, then reach out to us and let's just have a conversation about your practice. I call it a practice assessment, but honestly, we're conversing about where you are and where you want to go. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, of this series here, part 3, the red flags. And like I said, I was going to back it up to the screen. When I get a resume and then I set an appointment to call somebody for the phone screen, I'm going to call right on time. And the first thing I'm going to listen for is how they answer the phone. I want to hear if they're cheery, if they're uptone, if they're upbeat, or if they're just down, and then they find out it's you. And they're like, oh, yeah, hi, Brian, and they changed. And well, now I just got the veneer, right? I just got the superficial them. I want to really ask questions about their past and their present and what's going on in the future that are somewhat emotional and span the spectrum of how one would experience things in life in this profession of physical therapy. How do you feel about your last job? What did you love about your last employer? What did you hate about your last employer? And yes, I use the word hate. I'm looking for red flags where someone may say, well, oh, you have no idea what I just went through. I was just working for a group and blah, and then they're just bashing on the group, or they're just critical and nattery. Well, now I know I have somebody who's going to be that same way with me, right? You could be the best person on earth, but let me tell you, if they're going to be like that with you over a phone screen, kind of heads up on what you got there, right? Heads up on what's in front of you. In the phone screen, I'm trying to see that the person has motivation and direction and drive. You know, where do you see the profession of physical therapy going? How do you feel about your position now? Where do you see yourself? I don't know. This place is going down the tubes. I mean, reimbursements tanking and doctors are moving in, and, you know, nobody really cares about good work anymore, you know, stuff like that. And I don't think anyone's going to really say that on a screen, but you might. I mean, you might run into that kind of criticalness. So look out for that, right? Then look for flexibility. It's a red flag when you're looking for an applicant who's not flexible on the day and time that they can come in. You know, they're not trying to make it go right. They're trying to make you bend and twist around their schedule. Not a good sign. That's another red flag. If I look at the resume and they're not sticking around for a year or longer in places of employment, then they're hoppers. They're hoppers. They're going to hop at your place too. Sometimes there's a reason, you know, they've moved, they've relocated, they're married to a military person or something like that who relocates a lot. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. Another red flag. When I look at a resume, if there is 0 to 3 years out and I don't see a lot of Con Ed, hands-on, live continuing education, I'm a little worried about that. If they're not pursuing an interest, a particular interest, they're just getting their CEUs, well, it's okay. Just know what you have, right? Just know you have somebody who's a little bit flat on it, and they're just maintaining their license and they're practicing. But make sure that they're a contributing member to your group just the same. I don't care if they're failing to reach for more and brass rings and grow their professional knowledge into some new area of physical therapy. That may be fine. Maybe they're a manual therapist. They're very comfortable and skilled and a senior clinician, and they're not interested in venturing outside of that lane. That's fine too, but just pay attention to what they're studying. Pay attention to how often they're studying. Pay attention if they're just maintaining their license or enhancing themselves professionally. It tells you a little bit about what you have. Next, when you bring them in for the interview, set it up so that they have one-on-one time with the front desk person, one-on-one time with a clinical person or another person in the office without your presence. And then boomerang back around to that person and ask, what did they ask about? What was the conversation like? Did they ask questions? Were they interested? Or were they mum and it was all you filling the space and time with communication? So find out, you know, how that person interacted with others other than yourself. It's a red flag for me if they're not interested in talking to others, they're not bringing up topics. You know, if you ask yourself, like, if I was a therapist and I came in for an interview and I've been out 6 or 7 years and I was left alone in the gym with another therapist, what do you think my questions might be of that therapist? I mean, what do you think the top 3 questions would be that I would typically ask? And if somebody doesn't ask any of them, then that's a little bit of a red flag. Like, really? You're not really that interested in this position then? They're typically going to ask if a therapist is interviewing for a position and they're left alone with another therapist and the interviewer's not around. They're going to ask, so how do you like it here? How do you like the people? That's a very common question to ask. Number 2, what do you think of the EMR? How do you like the EMR? Second most popular question they're going to ask. Number 3, what's the schedule like? What's the clinical efficiency they ask of us? You know, how many patients per hour or how many units per visit or whatever. They're going to ask something along those lines. So productivity, efficiency, EMR, and what are the people like? How do you like it here? Those are the very typical common questions that somebody should ask, and you should be looking for that in an interview. The fact that they don't ask any of those, I would think, is a bit of a red flag, because I would think somebody who's thinking seriously about working here is going to want to know those things. Now, keep in mind, they may ask that of you, but you're the person who's hiring them, so chances are they're not going to put a lot of clout into your answers. They're going to weigh more heavily what the staff employees have to say. It's a red flag if somebody shows up for an interview with their parents. I have literally had younger generations, millennials and zennials, showing up for interviews with their parents. Or I am here because I ran it by my friend group and we all voted on what was the best practice to go to, and this one came out, so I thought I'd come here. That's a red flag. Like, you can't make a mature decision on your own. You can't exercise your own degree of independence when looking for your career path, your next move. these are real life examples I'm giving you and the thousands of owners across the country I've worked with. It's a red flag when somebody doesn't have time for the interview. Oh, how long is this going to take? I've been here about an hour. I really only budgeted an hour. They didn't ask up front. They didn't ask you on the phone screen. They're in the middle of it now. You're under a time crunch. Really? That's a red flag. It's a red flag, and this is a funny one, but true. I don't mean it. I literally had somebody interview a therapist who was a senior therapist, been around a while, said, could I just have a break? I'm just going to go outside for a moment and I'll be back. Went out into her car and took a nap for 20 minutes and then woke back up and came in to finish the interview. Okay, red flag. I don't think somebody who can keep themselves awake during the time of an interview probably shouldn't be granted the position in your practice. I think you should hold that out for somebody other than a license and a heartbeat, right? So these are real life examples and real life red flags that I've run into. Another one is, people who come in and it's a red flag if they ask about money during the phone screen or money up front. Now, if they're relocating, that may come up and may be appropriate to discuss because they're going to come from a distance for the interview or, journey over to uproot themselves for the position. But if it's a local market person, well, how much does this pay? Well, how much is the position? Well, I don't know. I haven't even met you yet, is what I would say on the phone screen. I was hoping we might be able to have a discussion about what's important to you professionally and what's important to us professionally and see if there's some synergy between us to come together and be equally contributing to a company culture that we're all winning at, including our patients. In that, I can assure you compensation, pay, and benefits are not going to be deficient. I am not going to be outside of our market competitiveness. I'm sure we can make ends meet, but this isn't a conversation I want to have on a phone screen. Why don't we talk about that during the interview? Like literally a bad idea for someone to bring that up on the phone screen. Bad idea for them to bring it up in the beginning of the interview. Push that to the end of the interview when you've actually decided that this person is a good fit and you're getting the vibe from them that they think they're a good fit. It's a red flag if, let's say, you're getting a vibe from them that you think it's a good fit and you think they're a good fit, and you say, you know what, I'd love to get into the particulars of our position. I'd love to share with you what the pay and benefits and Con Ed and details are that come along with it. Is if we make that work, if we bridge that gap, if we make ends meet regarding the details, would this be a position you'd be willing to accept here and now today or by this time tomorrow? If the person's like, nah, I'm like shopping, I got like 6 more interviews to go on, interview over. Thank you very much for coming in. I so appreciated our time together. If in fact you feel this is the place to be, I'd be happy to go over the particulars of our position and go over the values and pay and benefits and details with you at that time. But I'm really not interested in putting that out there at this moment since you have so many more interviews to go on. By all means, if the position's still available, reach back to me. I'd love to, finish up where we left off if that's something that you're really strongly interested in wanting to be here. I am not about to give my pay and benefits to somebody just to leverage it and have them shop around town and use me to get a higher paying position somewhere else or from somebody else. I would think that employer wouldn't want to be that person either. They wouldn't want the shoe on the other foot. So if we all as employers start agreeing that we're just not going to give out the inner vest of the operations of our business to people who are window shopping, you're going to have much better candidates, much more motivated candidates. You're going to have people who are picking the position for the right reasons. Getting the pay, benefits, and stuff out of the way is just a formality. Let's face it, these things aren't radically crazy different from one clinic to the next within 4 or 5 miles of each other. Honestly, it's not going to be that wildly different. And if it is, then somebody's got a horrible environment and they're compensating by throwing money at people. And who wants to run down that rabbit hole, right? That's not a good thing to do either. So those are some big red flags. Looking at their watch, not being well dressed. Still, appearance does matter. You have to be professional. Their hair, tattoos, earrings, piercings. If it's all crazy, in a family practice, that's dicey. People are uncomfortable with that. And you have to have certain policies that you hold everybody by. Cover up the tats. handle the piercings during the work hours. I can't have something that my patients and people are uncomfortable with. It's okay for you. I'm not telling you how to live your life, but you just can't live it here. Hey, if you want to learn more, I have many, many more tactics and details and strategies of where the person looks when you ask a question and how you should make eye contact and, when they should ask their questions, how you control the interview, how you make it a discussion, not a negotiation. If you really, really want to hire the best people and you want to learn that 5-phase hiring program, you can buy the hiring and recruiting program right off our website. It's literally the cost of about 2 patients start to finish, and you could have all of this training for yourself, or go full platinum and learn everything, all 5 structural divisions of a private practice, and learn how to actually thrive in the top 10%. Check out the links below. Go to our website, www.megbusiness.com. I may have put one too many W's in there. Check out our podcast, Physical Therapy, Private Practice, Secrets of the Top 10%. I cover a ton of stuff in there. Podcast number 215 is one of my absolute favorites, where I talk about financial stability, optimum time flexibility equals freedom, because that's why we all get up. We want to live a free life. So hire the best, hire the brightest, build the best culture, and you too could have work-life balance as an owner and live the life in freedom. So I hope this was helpful. Check out series part number 4 coming up next week.